Level 1, the applicant. You don't get recruited at a rooftop bar. There's no mysterious handler who slides a business card across a table and whispers an address. You do it the same way you'd apply for a job at the DMV. You go to a website, you fill out a form, you click submit, and then you wait. 6 months pass. You've almost forgotten about it when the email arrives. They want to see you. You book your own flight, you pay for your own hotel, you drive yourself to a building in Northern Virginia that could pass for a regional insurance office. Drop ceilings, flickering fluorescents, coffee that tastes like it was brewed during the Carter administration. A man in a gray suit sits across from you for 4 hours. He doesn't introduce himself. He asks where you grew up, what languages you've studied, whether you've ever broken the law, ever visited certain countries, ever held beliefs that might compromise your loyalty. The questions feel scattered, almost casual. They are neither. Every answer is a data point. Every pause is noted. Every contradiction is filed away. Then comes the polygraph. You sit in a chair wrapped in sensors, wires on your chest, clamps on your fingers, a strap around your arm measuring your blood pressure like a second heartbeat. The technician's voice is flat, clinical. Have you ever committed a crime you weren't caught for? Have you ever deliberately hurt someone? Have you ever had thoughts, and here the voice slows, about harming yourself or others? Here's what they don't tell you. The polygraph cannot reliably detect deception. The science is contested. What it can do is terrify you into honesty, and it works. You sit there drenched in nervous sweat, answering every question with the precision of someone who believes the machine can reach inside their skull. 3 weeks later, a letter arrives. You've been accepted into the Clandestine Service Trainee Program. Welcome to the Central Intelligence Agency. Level 2. The trainee. They send you to a place that doesn't appear on most maps. Locals in the surrounding counties call it the farm. The agency calls it Camp Peary. You'll call it home for the next 18 months. 9,000 acres of Virginia wilderness, swamps, dense forest, shooting ranges, mock villages, airstrips, and surveillance courses. All sealed behind fences and patrolled by armed guards who don't make small talk. 5 a.m., wake up. 5 miles before breakfast, then classrooms, then fieldwork, then more classrooms. You study the architecture of foreign governments, the internal logic of terrorist cells, the bureaucratic structure of intelligence services that want you dead. Then you study tradecraft, the agency's term for the ancient, paranoid art of the spy. You learn surveillance detection, how to read a street the way a musician reads sheet music. That sedan has made 3 left turns behind you. That man with the newspaper glanced up when you changed pace. That woman on the bench was at the bakery 40 minutes ago, 2 blocks away. Civilians walk through the world half asleep. You are never allowed to sleep again. You learn how to vanish. Enter a department store through the front, take the escalator to the 3rd floor, down the service stairwell, through the stockroom, out the loading dock, into a waiting vehicle that's already moving, gone. You learn lock picking, safe cracking, document photography, audio device placement. The locks you train on came from real embassies. The safes came from real government ministries. This is not theory. You learn recruitment. How to look at a human being and identify the precise crack in their foundation through which you will pour your leverage. The agency distills human vulnerability into 4 categories: money, ideology, coercion, ego. Everyone on Earth falls into at least one. Your job is to diagnose which one and apply pressure until something breaks. You run live operations in Richmond, in Norfolk, in the outer neighborhoods of Washington. Your instructors are playing the role of hostile intelligence officers, and they are very good at their jobs. If they catch you, you fail the exercise. Fail too many exercises, and you're done. 40% of your class will wash out. Not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack courage. They wash out because this work requires something specific and rare: the ability to deceive completely, to perform warmth you don't feel, to execute cold decisions without flinching, and then to sit across from your family at dinner that same evening and laugh at something on television. You graduate in the top 15%. They hand you a badge and a cover identity. Your real life is about to start, the one no one will ever know about. Level 3. The Case Officer. Your first posting is an embassy in Eastern Europe, a country still metabolizing the collapse of the Soviet Union, still deciding whether its future faces Washington or Moscow. You arrive in the middle of winter. The city is gray. The people are tired. The history is heavy. Officially, you are a political attaché. You have a plaque on your door, a secretary, and a calendar full of diplomatic receptions where you stand in uncomfortable suits drinking warm wine and asking polite questions. You write cables about regional economics and political shifts that get filed into classified reports at Langley. You look completely unremarkable. Unofficially, you are there to steal. Not money, not objects, people. Specifically, the loyalties of people who have access to things your government wants to know. A cabinet official, a signals officer, a defense contractor, a bureaucrat who processes procurement requests, a secretary who handles classified correspondence. Anyone with access is a potential asset. That is the word the agency uses. Asset. Clean. Technical. And almost completely devoid of what it actually means. A human being you are systematically manipulating into committing treason against their own country. You identify your first target 8 weeks into your posting, a mid-level functionary in the foreign ministry. He attends the right meetings, handles the right cables, and carries something heavier than his briefcase. Gambling debts that have followed him like a shadow for 2 years. You engineer a meeting at a casino. You buy him drinks. You lose gracefully at cards and make him feel like the smarter man in the room. Over the following months, you become his closest confidant. You lend him money, then more. He stops counting what he owes because the number is too painful to look at. When the moment comes, you don't ask him to betray his country. You never use that word. You ask him to share a few documents, just background material. Nothing sensitive, you assure him, just enough to settle the debt. He agrees he has no choice. He hasn't had a choice since the second drink. You file your report. Your station chief commends your work. You do not sleep well. Level 4. The NOC, most officers who work in this business, have a safety net. They carry diplomatic credentials. If something goes wrong, if a dead drop is discovered, if an asset is burned, if the host country's counterintelligence service starts asking questions, they invoke diplomatic immunity. They get put on a plane. Careers survive, families are protected, you are offered something else. Non-official cover, NOC, pronounced knock. The most isolated and dangerous assignment in the entire intelligence community. No embassy, no badge, no diplomatic protection, no government ID, no official record, no trail leading back to Langley. If you are caught by a counterintelligence unit, by a foreign security service, by the wrong person asking the right questions, the U.S. government will not acknowledge your existence. The State Department will issue no statement. The White House will say nothing. You will be processed under whatever laws govern the country where you were caught. In some places, that means a prison sentence. In others, it means a room with no windows and methods that leave no visible marks. In others, it means a shallow grave in a jurisdiction that doesn't report its statistics. They build you a legend. That's what the agency calls a fabricated identity. Not a fake ID, but an entire constructed life. You are now a management consultant. You work for a firm with a real address, real employees, real invoices, real clients. None of them know what the firm actually is. None of them know who you actually are. You travel to countries where the U.S. has no official intelligence footprint. You meet people no embassy officer could approach without triggering alarms. You operate in the dark, recruiting assets that exist nowhere in any official record. Your neighbors believe you travel too much for work. Your girlfriend has stopped asking where you go. Your parents think you left government service years ago and moved into the private sector. The only people who know the truth are your handlers at Langley, with whom you communicate exclusively through dead drops and encrypted channels. You haven't seen any of them in person in nearly 2 years. You have never felt more alone in your life. Level 5. The paramilitary officer. They pull you out after Beirut. A local intelligence service got suspicious. Good counterintelligence, patient work, the kind that takes months. They photographed you near an asset meeting. You spotted the surveillance early enough to abort, but not early enough to feel safe. You're not officially burned, but you're close enough to the flame that staying means gambling with your life. You're not sent home. You're reassigned. The Special Activities Center, the part of the agency that doesn't brief Congress on operational details, the part that works with military units operating under classified authorities in places where the U.S. is not officially present. You undergo additional training, weapons systems you weren't taught at the farm, explosive ordnance, combat medicine, insertion and extraction techniques, how to survive capture, how to resist interrogation, a skill with a particular grim irony, given what you know about the other side of that table. You deploy to active conflict zones. Sometimes you're advising indigenous forces, local fighters who have the geography and the trust of the population and none of the equipment or training they need. You spend weeks in the mountains or the desert teaching people to do things that will almost certainly get some of them killed. And the question you learn to stop asking is how many. You call in airstrikes. You coordinate extractions. You walk into villages where everyone knows an American presence, there is a death sentence for whoever spoke to you. On one operation, things go wrong. They go wrong in the particular way that combat operations go wrong. Not through bad planning, but through the irreducible chaos of violence and terrain and the unpredictability of human beings under fire. People die who weren't supposed to die. An investigation is opened. The investigation is classified. The classified findings clear you of wrongdoing. You move to the next deployment. You don't discuss what happened. Not with your colleagues, not with your supervisors, not with the agency psychologist you're required to see every 18 months who asks how you're sleeping. You tell her you're sleeping fine. You are not sleeping fine. Level 6, the counterintelligence officer. Something has gone wrong. It's not obvious at first. It never is. It shows up in the data as a statistical anomaly, a pattern that doesn't fit. Assets going quiet, operations that were solid on paper producing nothing. A surveillance detection run that should have been clean coming back dirty, in ways that suggest foreknowledge, not coincidence. Someone is talking. Someone with access to your operations is feeding that access to a foreign intelligence service. And the damage, by the time you're brought in to assess it, may already be catastrophic. You spend the next 3 years hunting a ghost inside your own organization. Counterintelligence is not the work of action. It's the work of patience, of sitting with uncertainty until clarity becomes unavoidable. You reconstruct every compromised operation. You map every person who had access. You draw connections that exist only on paper and in the cold geometry of overlapping information. You interview colleagues you've known for years with the detached clinical precision of someone who has been trained to believe that anyone could be the source. The work corrodes you. You begin to trust no one. Not colleagues, not friends, not family. You catch yourself analyzing conversations for inconsistencies. You notice when someone changes their routine. You start to see surveillance where there is none, which is perhaps the occupational hazard that most reveals what this career does to a person. When you finally identify the source, it lands like a diagnosis you already suspected but weren't ready to receive. Someone you knew, someone whose work you respected. The arrest is handled quietly. There's no press conference. There's no public accounting. There's a classified trial, a sentence that will not appear in any news coverage, and a star added to a wall in a building most Americans have never entered. You write your report. You move on. You don't talk about it. Level 7. The station chief. You have your own station now. It might be a capital city in the Middle East. It might be a consulate in Southeast Asia. It might be a listening post in a country that is technically neutral and actually anything but. What it is, regardless of location, is yours. Every officer under your command, every asset in your network, every operation running in country, every decision about what to push forward and what to kill before it becomes a problem you can't contain. You are a diplomat by day. You sit across from foreign ministers and intelligence chiefs and military officers who know exactly what you are and engage with you in the polished theater of mutual understanding. The language of two people who both know the other is lying and have collectively agreed to maintain the performance anyway. You manage upward and downward simultaneously. Washington wants production. The ambassador wants deniability. The local government wants leverage. Your officers want resources and support and clear guidance in situations where clear guidance is impossible. Your assets want assurance that if this all goes wrong, there's a plan for them. There isn't always a plan. You approve operations that, if they surface, become international incidents. You kill operations that could yield intelligence you desperately need, but carry risk the station cannot absorb. Every call is made with incomplete information under time pressure by someone who hasn't slept more than 4 hours in months. Your marriage ended somewhere in the second Middle Eastern posting. You told yourself it was the distance. You know now that distance was only a symptom. The real cause was that there was no version of this life that left enough of you intact to be a partner to anyone. Your children are older now. They know a version of you, careful, edited, curated. They know the story, they don't know the person. You sleep 4 hours a night and tell yourself it's enough. It isn't. Level 8. The Black Site Commander. There is a facility that does not appear in any budget document. It is located in a country whose government receives substantial and untracked financial consideration for its hospitality and its silence. The building is unremarkable from the outside. A warehouse, or what was once a light industrial facility surrounded by perimeter security provided by local services who have been paid to guard without asking questions. Inside there are cells. Inside there are interrogation rooms. Inside there are medical facilities whose sole purpose is to keep human beings alive to a level sufficient for continued questioning. The people held here are high-value detainees. That is the official designation. Bomb makers, network financiers, operational planners, couriers whose knowledge connects cells across a dozen countries. They were captured in raids that were never announced. They were never charged with a crime. They never appeared before any judicial authority. Their families don't know where they are. As far as any official record is concerned, they ceased to exist the moment they were taken. You run this facility for 2 years. The methods used here are classified. The official term is enhanced interrogation. Sleep deprivation measured in days. Stress positions held until the body stops registering pain as information. Temperature extremes, waterboarding. Some of these techniques were legally authorized when you began using them. Some of them had their legality constructed retroactively by Justice Department attorneys who drafted their memos in air-conditioned offices and had never been in a room where the stakes were a forthcoming attack on a city. You tell yourself the information saves lives. On good nights, you believe it. There are operations that were disrupted. There are attacks that didn't happen because of what came out of those rooms. You hold on to that. On the other nights, the ones that come more frequently as the months accumulate, you lie on your bunk staring at the ceiling and conduct a private, recursive argument with yourself about the kind of person you have become in service of the kind of country you believe you are protecting. You receive a classified commendation when you rotate out. The facility continues to operate. Someone else runs it now. You don't ask who. You have learned the value of not knowing certain things. Level 9, the Division Director. 25 years after you sat in a fluorescent-lit waiting room filling out a government form, you walk through the lobby of CIA headquarters at Langley and past the memorial wall. 139 stars carved into white Alabama marble. No names beside most of them. The officers they represent are still classified in death as they were in life. Some of the stars are for people you knew. Some of them mark operations you designed. You don't stop. You never stop. Stopping feels like something you're not permitted to do. You run an entire division of the National Clandestine Service now. Hundreds of officers, thousands of assets embedded across multiple continents, feeding intelligence into systems you oversee. A budget drawn from black funds that appear in no public accounting, appropriated through channels that a sitting senator couldn't fully trace if they wanted to. And most of them don't want to. You brief the president on covert operations. You sit in the situation room with people whose names appear in newspapers, making decisions that never will. You recommend targets for drone strikes in countries where we are not officially operating. You authorize actions that exist in a legal gray space so carefully constructed that a team of attorneys has spent years engineering the precise language needed to make them defensible, theoretically, if they ever surface. which they are not supposed to. You testify before congressional oversight committees. There are open sessions where you answer questions within the boundaries of what is cleared for unclassified disclosure. And there are closed sessions, no transcripts, no staff, where a handful of senators ask the real questions and receive answers that are technically accurate and operationally incomplete. And everyone in the room is engaged in the same quiet performance of plausible distance. They don't want the details. Details are exposure. What they want is to be able to say, honestly, that they were informed. You give them that. The operations run, the intelligence flows. Some of it prevents catastrophes that no one will ever know were prevented. Some of it creates conditions that produce new catastrophes a decade later. The machine is vast and largely self-sustaining and runs on secrets the way an engine runs on fuel, and you are one of a small number of people whose job it is to keep the engine turning. You don't sleep. You don't vacation. You don't think too hard about the bodies in countries most Americans couldn't locate on an unlabeled map. You do the work. Level 10, the ghost 30 years. 30 years of operations that officially never occurred. 30 years of assets recruited through methods that would horrify a jury. 30 years of decisions made in dark rooms and sealed corridors and classified sessions that altered the trajectories of nations in ways no history book will ever accurately record, because the record doesn't exist and you made sure of it. The retirement ceremony is held in a conference room on the 4th floor. 50 people attend. Colleagues who have been with you across postings on 4 continents, officers you mentored who now run their own divisions. A handful of people from the support staff who have worked the same building for decades without knowing what happened in most of it. The director speaks. He uses words like sacrifice and dedication and the long, unglamorous cost of freedom. His voice is warm and his remarks are genuine, and none of it quite fits around the shape of what you actually did. You receive the Distinguished Intelligence Cross, the highest decoration the agency bestows. It will go into a box in the back of a closet in a house in rural Virginia because you cannot display it, cannot explain it, cannot reference it in any conversation with anyone who wasn't in that room. It exists in a category of things that are simultaneously the most significant artifacts of your life and the ones you are least permitted to acknowledge. You sign more paperwork. You are reminded, and as if you needed reminding, that everything you know, everything you witnessed, every operation you ran or approved or concealed is classified for the remainder of your natural life. There is no expiration on this obligation. There is no version of old age where you get to finally tell someone the truth. You move to a house with a long perimeter and a clear sightline on the driveway. The friends you have are few. The people you worked with are scattered or dead or maintaining their own silences in their own houses, in their own corners of Virginia and Maryland. The people who knew you before the agency and before the farm, before the first posting, before the first asset, before the first dead drop, are strangers who know a version of you that stopped being accurate 27 years ago. You have nothing to offer each other. Some nights you wake at 3 a.m. with the certainty that something is wrong. You walk the property line in the dark. You check the locks. You stand in the yard and listen to the silence of the Virginia countryside until your nervous system is satisfied that no one is there. Then you go back inside. You sit with the memories that will follow you to the end. The assets who were caught and processed and erased. The operations that collapsed in ways that got people killed who trusted you to keep them safe. The faces in the rooms that you have spent years trying not to see when you close your eyes. None of it is on the record. None of it was acknowledged. None of it happened in the only sense that matters to history. You are a ghost who walks around in a living body in a country that needed you to do what you did and needed even more to never have to know about it. The pension is generous. The healthcare is comprehensive. The government keeps its financial obligations. The rest of it you carry alone. And when you die, quietly, without ceremony, in that house with the long perimeter, there will be a new star on the wall at Langley. No name beside it. Just the mark, carved into marble, joining the others. Right now somewhere, a college dorm, a late-night apartment, a military barracks with the lights out. Someone is on a laptop filling out an application on the CIA's website. They're young, they're idealistic. They've watched movies where the spy is cool and quick witted and always makes it home. They're imagining adventure. They're imagining meaning. They're imagining being part of something that matters. They don't know yet about the loneliness, about the moral mathematics of deciding which compromises are acceptable and discovering that the acceptable ones keep expanding, about the things you see that change the structure of your mind permanently without your permission, about the strange, airless life of carrying truths you will never be allowed to say out loud. They'll learn. They always do. And the cycle continues.